Hi, Francesca. Welcome to the EO Wonder podcast.
Thank you so much. Hi, Kalika. Thanks for having me.
So, you are such an amazing entrepreneur. I guess you call yourself a maverick entrepreneur. You're a communications specialist. You're the co founder of Basic Bananas, Ocean Lovers, The Data People, Moments of Humanity. You're an author. You're a board member, investor, and you've also won the Young Entrepreneurs Award. And I would just love for our audience to learn more about you and how you came to be so awesome.
Oh, thank you. That's really kind of you. And I do want to just reframe the Young Entrepreneur Award. I'm not that young anymore. That was about 8 years ago, maybe. But hey,
You look young.
I'm still happy that I did win that. Where do I start? So
Oh,
obviously,
sorry. And one more thing. You just gave birth
yes, I do.
2 months ago as well. Your
I have
second?
my second one. Yeah, I have a 2-year-old girl and a 2 month, almost 7 and a bit week old girl, and they're both beginner babies. My friends would call them because they're just so easy. So everyone always says, "You got the beginner babies." I'm like, "Yes, I did," and I'm really grateful for that. And so obviously, I probably always mention, especially when it's an audio, a podcast that is audio and video. People always wonder, "Hey, what's with this accent?" So I do live in Australia, but I was born in Switzerland. So grew up in Switzerland. My family are half Swiss, German, half French. I grew up in both parts and then moved to Sydney, Australia 18 years ago and have been in Australia ever since building businesses. So I started off in marketing, and actually I started off in advertising. So I did a degree in political science and marketing because I did international politics because I wanted to work for the United Nations. Really, that was my childhood dream. And then I ended up in advertising, very opposite to what my ambitions were. And I sort of just fell into it. And then I did a few years in advertising and then realized that it's not completely aligned with my value system. And then I started my own small business, a marketing company, and mainly working with small businesses. And our focus, and I still run this business, started in 2009 in Sydney. And the focus for us is about educating and mentoring small business owners when it comes to marketing so that they know at least strategy and they can then outsource some of that without getting ripped off. And you know this more than anyone. You're in the same space and you know how important it is for us to understand at least some of the strategy. And so that started my entrepreneurial journey. In fact, what started my entrepreneurial journey was a life event, probably the most difficult life event in my journey, which was the passing of my father. And he passed away at the young age of 58. Very, very just sudden. He had a heart attack. And back home in Switzerland while I was in Sydney. And that really just made me, actually, I fell a bit into a hole and made me question my past. And the question that I still ask myself now to this date, thanks to my father, was, if I was to die right now, would I be happy with what I'm doing? And if the answer is no, if I think, you know what, my life is not on the right trajectory or I'm not that happy, then I need to change something. And so back then I was in advertising. My dad passed. I asked myself, if I was to die right now, would I be happy? And the answer was no. And that's when I started my own company. And the funny thing, I'll share this one quickly too, because I grew up in Switzerland and, the cliche sort of Swiss person usually gets a job and then, follows the career path, climbs the ladder, which I was doing. And you don't normally just jump off that ladder. My parents would have looked upon that. And so when I did that, when I jumped off the ladder and I started my own business without really knowing what I was doing in terms of running a business, I had no idea. I didn't tell anyone for at least at home in Switzerland, didn't tell anyone for at least 8 months until I could see that, hey, this is actually working. Because in the beginning, I wasn't sure, is this going to work? Or do I maybe have to go get a job again? And after maybe 8-9 months, I'm like, you know what, this is working. we're starting to gain traction and we're starting to make some money. I think this is working. And that's when I started to tell even my mom. My brother was the first one to know. And he's the conventional Swiss guy, except right now he started his own business, 14 years after I did. And I'm helping him with, some of the branding and marketing. And so I didn't tell anyone. And that was a good decision for me because I was so uncertain about my decision too, that if other people would have told me, hey, you're crazy, and, what are you doing, which they would have, it would have really impacted my mindset.
Yeah, your life is so full of adventure, starting from this catalytic event, of your father dying, but adventure and courage also is weaved through. Tell us a little bit about some of your adventures that also shaped your journey to get you to where you are today.
Yeah, adventure. Oh gosh, adventure is one of my top values. My number one value is love, and I'm really trying to practice unconditional love, which I'm not always succeeding at. And my second one is freedom and adventure. And adventure for me, since I was a child, has always been one of the biggest commonalities throughout all the common thread through my life was always adventures. I just love and crave adventures, and that includes all sorts, but definitely includes a lot of traveling and a lot of adventure traveling. So again, I feel like, these conversations that I have with you and sometimes on these shows, I'm like, oh, wait, I have an epiphany right now. So clearly my dad was a catalyst for a lot of these things. So when my dad also used to ride motorbikes. And when he was still here, he wanted me to get the license and ride with him. But because, father-daughter relationship was a bit complicated and clashing, and we were both a bit rebels and stubborn, so I didn't. I'm like, no way. And then he passed away, and then I got my motorbike license. I'm like, I'm going to ride now motorbikes because I actually really want to, and I also want to sort of, follow his footsteps in that regard. So I got my motorbike license, and I just got so immersed into motorcycling, and especially for me, more so going on adventures with motorbikes. I don't actually ride that much here in Australia. I have 2 motorbikes here. They only come out maybe once or twice a month at the moment. I do also have a newborn, so it's different, but I mainly ride overseas. So I love doing crazy adventures. So that's when some of the crazy adventures started happening when I got the license. And then about 5 years ago, I was married to a really lovely guy, and we still actually work together now. But I was again at this pivotal point where I was asking myself, am I really happy? Or is it just good? Is it just good, or is it amazing? Am I just cruising through this and it's really easy, or is there more? And so I didn't know the answer. So I thought, what? One way for me to really reflect upon this is to go on a crazy adventure. So I obviously heard about Marco Polo and the Silk Road from when I was very young, just studying history, and I was always intrigued about this Silk Road. So I thought, what if I ride along the Silk Road roughly on a motorbike? And that idea came around Christmas it was probably around Christmas, January. In June, I was on a motorbike riding along the Silk Road from Switzerland to Kazakhstan. 12,000 Ks, I think it's about 7,500 miles. And through some of the most incredible, most challenging and beautiful countries, including one of my favorite ones was Tajikistan, along the border of Afghanistan. It was the roads were so difficult, and so the landscapes were so beautiful, and the people were just beyond amazing in these places. Some of the poorest people and some of the kindest, most hospitable, I think is a word, people that I've ever met. And also I tried to go through Iran. So that was when, that was 4 years ago, when the situation was slightly different. And on my Swiss passport, I got a visa to go through Iran. And it was one of my dreams to ride through Iran. I've heard stories of people that have done it, that have had an amazing journey. And the Persian culture, again, I found it very intriguing. I love the Persian culture, and especially some of the poets. You would know some of them, Rumi, Hafez, they come from that region. And
the Sufis, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Rumi's, I think, from Tajikistan, but some of these, the art and the literature that comes out of the Persian region is incredible. So I got a visa, I got to the border of Iran, and my dream was slowly coming true, except I didn't get in because there was a bit of a mishap happened. So I was riding for parts of the route of the adventure. I was riding with one of my friends, Mike, from the US, and he couldn't obviously go through Iran because on an American passport, it would not have been very good. So when we got our bikes ready in Georgia, the country, in Tbilisi, the capital of Georgia, he put our number plates back on the bikes. They were Swiss registrations. And he accidentally put my number plate on his bike and his number plate on my bike. It was a total accident. And we didn't know. And I made it through the border into Armenia without a problem. And I made it also out of Armenia without a problem. And I got out of Armenia, I rode through Armenia on my own, and then I got into Iran at the border, and they checked everything, and they gave me back my papers, and they said, "Welcome to Iran." And I was, oh my God, I'm doing this. I'm here in Iran. I just got in. They only stamp another document, not the passport, so you don't have challenges later when traveling. And I get back to my bike, started putting on my helmet and my jacket, and another guy walks over and he says, "Hey, show me your document again." So I did. You get this motorbike license, a document. And he looked at it and he looked at my motorbike, and then he said, "Problem." I said, "No problem." That's usually my mindset for everything. No problem, especially in these countries. No problem. It's all good. Don't worry. And he's like, "Yes, problem." And then he pointed at my number plate and the number plate number in my document, and it didn't match up. And then I realized, I have the wrong number plate. And then he said, "Sorry, but you can't travel with the wrong number plate." I said, no, it's okay. Don't worry. It wasn't a problem in Armenia. It's all good. He's like, "No, sorry, but you really can't do this." So I was devastated. I burst into tears, and I was sitting at the Iranian border. And this, again, I know there's a lot of media around Iran, and of course, a lot of it is happening there. The people that I met, even at the border, were just beautiful. And I was sitting there next to my bike on the pavement, just in a, crumbled in a heap of sadness for a few minutes, probably actually longer than that. And a few local guys walked over. They're like, "You okay?" I said, "I'm okay, but I'm just sad because I wanted to come in." And one guy said, "Hey, you could also put your motorbike on a truck and ship it to the border to Turkmenistan. That's where I was going, and you can come in and just travel by public transport." I'm like, "No, I actually don't want to do that. I want to ride on my motorbike." So I turned around and went back through Armenia, and then again through Georgia, and then through Azerbaijan, and then took a ferry from Azerbaijan across the Black Sea over to Turkmenistan. So yeah, that adventure taught me a lot about myself, about life, about people, and the common themes, and we can explore any of these. It really was around courage and kindness. I call it the moments of humanity, around detachment, and being able to detach more from outcomes, which at that border, the incident at the border, I really failed to detach. I was grumpy and sad for, I reckon, 2-3 days. And I remember traveling on the bike and just like, a bit sad and grumpy. And that's just, I did have the awareness in the moment to see, I'm in the most beautiful landscape here, doing the most amazing adventure, and I'm grumpy. And I couldn't snap out, but that is because I didn't master the power of detachment. So huge lesson. Intuition was another theme that sort of followed me along these adventures.
And it led to other beautiful adventures, right? A different path that you would have never gone through, right?
Yeah. Different paths. And also some of my friends who didn't agree with me going through Iran, one in particular, one of my best friends, she said, "Hey, I think it's really stupid what you're doing. And she said, just promise me if there's any complication at the border and you can't get in, don't push. She said, if there's anything that is avoiding your journey through Iran, please don't be the stubborn, girl that you are, and don't push. And, there might have been a reason why I wasn't able to do that journey. Because maybe, and this is another theme that I explore a lot in one of the books that I've written, The Courage Map, is this theme of just trust that the universe has your back.
Yes.
And so that was one of these moments, like, you know what, this really is not what I would have wanted, but just trust that even if I don't know why, just trust. And that's how I think with a lot of things in life, even, my marriage, but, in the end, breaking apart, just trust that it's all good. It's all good.
Yeah, I think that there's that one thing that Albert Einstein says, the question you have to ask is, do you think that we live in a friendly universe? Like you said, a universe that has your back.
Yeah, I haven't heard that. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. So trusting.
Yeah.
And your adventures still continue. I think when we talked last, you said that you took your 2-year-old to a 2-month road trip.
Yes,
from
I
Switzerland,
did.
Right?
Yeah, I did. And again, this is really interesting because so I had Luana 2 years ago. So I'm a geriatric mom. I had her when I was 39. I was pregnant at 38. Had her at 39. And then Kaya, my second one, now got pregnant at 40 and had her just, now at 41. And it was interesting because when I had Luana and when we got pregnant with my partner John, I told my mom and she wasn't that excited. I'm her only daughter. She's got a son and a daughter, and my brother has 2 kids, and she never expected me to have kids, I guess. And so when I told her first, she was like, oh, what? And her first sort of reaction was, what about your adventures? What are you going to do with all your adventures? Because I definitely will continue some of these motorcycle journeys. And ideally, one of my goals is to go all around the world. So I've done a small part of the world, and I've done South America, parts of it, and then COVID hit. So I had to stop. And then I had kids because I guess COVID babies, right? And so a lot of people, when I was pregnant with Luana, said, oh, this is really exciting, but you're going to probably struggle with not having adventures anymore. And I feel like maybe because I am very stubborn, I almost had to prove myself and people wrong that, hey, it's actually, I can still have adventures with my kids. They're just different. And they are a bit more tiring and they're a bit less crazy. I wouldn't take my girls through Iran. And maybe not on a motorbike either, but you can still have adventures. So my daughter, who is 2, she's been to 14 countries already. Not that she probably remembers most of them, but she's been to 14 countries because I've kept traveling and I can also work from the road. So just now in European summer, for us in winter in Australia, May, June, I decided to go to Europe for 2 months and work from the road with her while I was pregnant with Kaya. And we did this amazing journey. We flew into Switzerland to see my family. And then I got a rental car, and we drove through Italy. And then we took a ferry across to Greece, and we went through Greece, Albania, Montenegro, Croatia, Slovenia, Italy, and back into Switzerland. It's actually the same I did on my motorbike, but the other way. I did it on the other way around, the beginning of the Silk Road. And so I started planning this, and then 2 of my girlfriends from here said, hey, can we join? I'm like, yeah, let's make it a girls' trip. Tom was going to come, my partner, but he also runs his own business and he couldn't get away last minute. So it's like, oh, he was devastated. He's like, I really can't get away. And he probably expected me to not go. I'm like, well, I'm still going. I'm excited. And we're doing this. And so 2 of my girlfriends came and they joined us one joined me in Greece and one joined us in Croatia. And then also a nanny that I used to have here from Germany, she joined us in Greece. So half of it I did alone with Luana, and then half of it we had this whole girls trip. And 2 of us, one of my friends and I, also had to work. So we would get up early in the morning, work a few hours, and then go on a little adventure, and then come back, have a little nap, work, and then go out usually in the evening for some pizza and, just enjoying the European late night summer nights, which are so beautiful.
Wow, so you really had this girl tribe, this that was also supporting you, and you were probably also supporting them because they probably wouldn't have gone if you didn't make the
No,
first steps, right?
no, no, they wouldn't have gone. And also, I think I'm quite fortunate, and I definitely count my blessings that I am European. I'm born there, so it was easy for me to get things organized. Like I've got a friend he was a mechanic, and he hooked me up with the car, and I've done this journey before, so I know that places that some people would maybe go, where exactly is Albania, and isn't Albania dangerous? I'm like, it's actually probably at the moment one of my favorite places to explore, because it is so unexplored, and it is still behind, and the people are beautiful, and the perception that we have of Albanians is probably not quite accurate. So I love going to these places, and then also telling people, hey, these are some of the nice, kindest people. I do want to share too, because I feel like I need to give the Albanians a shout out on our journey through Albania. And so, yeah, we called it, well, my friends called this trip the hot girl summer trip through Europe with a pregnant lady. So I was 30 weeks, I was between 22 and 32 weeks pregnant, I think, for the whole journey. So a pregnant lady, so not that hot, and a toddler, a 2-year-old, a nanny, and two 40 somethings girls traveling through Europe. It actually made for a really great picture. But back to Albania, on one of the days, my daughter had some red dots on her body, and I thought it could be a heat rash because it was pretty hot that day, or it could also be my friends in Switzerland had chickenpox, but we tried to not be close. But actually, it's not that dangerous on kids, and I've already had it, so it's not that dangerous on a pregnant lady. And you only get it, I think, once from memory. I'm not that, super knowledgeable when it comes to these things. So we went to the hospital because she also had a pretty high fever, and it was Sunday and there was no doctors open. I went to this hospital, a local hospital someone pointed me to, and everyone was so nice. I walked in with Luana carrying her, and straight away they sent me to the children's section, and the doctor attended us straight away. Again, everything was super fast and super kind. And she looked at her, said, yeah, I think it's a heat rash. And she gave her some stuff to lower her fever. And as we finished with the examination, I took my credit card out and said, okay, where can I pay? She said, no, you don't have to pay. It's okay. And I actually burst into tears. I think I was also a bit emotionally charged because Luana was sick and I'm in Albania with her, and I felt a bit sorry for Luana. So I burst into tears and walked out with this lady, said, you don't have to pay. I think she thought that maybe I'm just some poor traveler that can't afford to pay. So I burst into tears, but I burst into tears because he was so kind. And then I walked out and I went to a little tiny restaurant across the street to get Luana some apple juice so that she drinks a bit more liquid. And I got a little apple juice out of the fridge and walked to the counter. And again, there was this young Albanian guy, and I said, hey, can I pay for the juice? He's like, no, it's okay. You don't have to pay. I said, what? He's like, you don't have to pay. I said, wow. And these are poor people. They don't have a lot of means. And so I said to him, and again, I was very teary. I tried not to cry because didn't want to make him feel awkward, but I was very teary, and I said, Albanians are some of the nicest people I get emotional now, are some of the nicest people I've ever met. And he said, you know what he said? He said, I wish the rest of the world knew this. He said to me, most people think that we're different to what we are, but I really, appreciate that you see that we are good people. And I said, I'm going to spread the word for you guys wherever I can.
And you're true to your word. Oh,
Yes.
that is so
Yeah.
lovely. Yeah, and I think also too, because you are yourself a really generous soul. That's really what you're known for. You're always constantly giving, whether or not it's wisdom or insight or, these adventures. Like you've written several best-selling books. And I think that's probably why, right? The universe is probably making
Maybe.
everything balanced, right?
I don't know. I definitely have generosity as one of my
Yeah.
life principles to just, I think kindness is a big one, and generosity, and it doesn't mean that you have to give stuff freely, but just having this generous heart, and kindness, I think, is a huge one. And it's actually a principle that I talk about in one of the books, and it's so not business related, but it's so business related. And with my team, even when I first wrote about this principle, and especially the mantra that comes with it for me is to always respond with kindness. So with my team also, I talked about it with them, and I said, hey, let's do a little experiment. And for the next 30 days, to see if we can create a habit, we always respond with kindness, even if we have a phone call with a grumpy person. So if somebody calls us and they're not nice, or an email that is grumpy, usually the first sort of, reaction is to maybe respond back with a bit of heat. Let's just respond with kindness and see what happens. And we all started doing it, and we all realized that it's incredible how much you can turn someone around when you just respond with kindness. So I think that's probably also one of the reasons why we can attract kindness, because kindness begets kindness.
And as an entrepreneurial leader, it's so important that you're there at the helm, because oftentimes when you think about business owners, like even a lot of women, they think, I have to change myself. I have to be
Oh my God.
forceful, arrogant,
Yes.
know it all, like, because there's this thing about an entrepreneur, not a thing, but like a persona. And
Yeah.
I think what's wonderful about women entrepreneurs that are courageous enough to show up as themselves, it's really wonderful to do that.
It's such a passion of mine to observe that. And I think I've heard some of your interviews here on the show where people have talked about that women, that, and I think it's changing now, but we used to think that maybe because, we still show up in the minority, and we're both part of the entrepreneurs organization. We're still a minority. And I definitely remember showing up to some events. Years ago, I went to an event. I've been a member for over 8 years. And I remember I went to an event in San Diego once when I was working there. And everyone just thought I'm the wife of someone.
Me too.
Automatically. Yeah. I'm sure you get the
Me too.
same.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's changing, but then, and I sort of would just go a bit with it. I'm like, yeah, cool. But, it's all good. But that was sort of the perception of, you can't be a woman and, and run a successful business. So it was a bit like, okay. But that's why I think we used to have this belief that we have to be, as you say, maybe a bit arrogant and a bit masculine, and we don't. I think that we are such incredible leaders, women, almost like naturally, if we bring this kindness into what we do and the warmth. And still, of course, I'm definitely very firm also and demanding, but doing it in a way that is feminine at the same time. And I think that's a beautiful mix. If we women can do that, I think we are incredible leaders. And it doesn't matter. I think it actually, one of my people would also describe me as a little bit of irreverent. I actually never knew what this word meant. When the first time I moved to Australia, somebody said, I think you're a bit irreverent. And then I looked up the meaning. I'm like, oh, that's not that nice. I think it meant something. The definition that I got back was like someone who didn't really care. I care so much, but I don't really care about what people think about me. And I think if we can all have that, then we can show up even more as who we are authentically. And I feel, and you're doing that so beautifully. The more we show up authentically, the more things just fall into place, and the more it feels right, the more we walk our path. And you're doing that. I've listened to many of your interviews, and you're such an example of this.
Oh, you're so sweet. I do remember a time when I think I was president of the chapter, and someone had asked me about like I guess they thought I was an assistant or maybe the intern that was there. And they were like, where's the bathroom or some type of administrative thing? And I showed them bathroom.
So
And later on, they realized that I'm the one introducing the speaker, or someone introduced me to speak or something like that. And they came up to me and they were like mortified and like, But if you're kind, like you said, and you just show up as how you are, like it's not there. They don't know, because this is societal's perception. You can't say to someone like, well, you should know who I am. Like it's, we're already confident on who we are. Yeah.
Exactly. And I feel like you almost, sometimes you see women that are trying to almost force people to believe something else than they believe by talking about it. But I actually, and this is generally, a bit of life wisdom, just for us to just show up how we are and who we are, I think is enough. It's this whole walking the talk, and you've got kids, you see it with kids even. They are such monkeys in terms of, what's the word that you guys say, monkey see, monkey do, I think in English. It's
That's
such,
right.
yeah, it's such an example. How we show up is how they just copy us. And I feel like in business, it's the same. We don't really have to, I don't have to go bang on about, how women this and that and how guys should change their perception. I think if we just all show up and do our thing, guys and girls will slowly realize, hey, yeah, this is very powerful, and women as leaders are incredible in their feminine. They don't have to go into their masculine.
I 100% believe in that showing up. Like right now, it's Saturday morning for you, and you have a newborn and you have a 2-year-old and you're showing up for this conversation that everyone is going to be benefiting from, and I think that that's really wonderful too, as someone who is also extremely busy, right? You're a serial entrepreneur running multiple businesses, and you're still showing up early in the
Yeah,
morning.
I'm glad you bring that up, because for me that's one of the biggest, and it's probably a bit of a remnant of being a Swiss born is in me, and I talked about this with my partner, with Tom, last night. I really value showing up, and what's the word? It's loyal, and there's another word for it when you just don't pull out of things. I forgot the word, but we talked about it, and I feel like more and more people don't have it. And it actually, annoys me a little bit when we have meetings, and I have lots of meetings booked in with different people, and then sometimes just 10 minutes before a meeting, someone will email and say, oh, I'm so sorry, I can't make it. And I'm like, dude, I just organized 20 million different kids, and I just fed my baby, I got my nanny ready, I got changed out of my tacky top to be at this meeting. You know how many mountains I moved? And I didn't want to be here either. I don't actually want to do this meeting, but I'm here because we committed to meeting, and you pull out. So,
Last minute.
yeah, and a lot of people do that, and I feel like it's not cool. It's not cool, and we need to teach our next generations again to just show up, because someone else said this quote about how you do one thing is how you do everything.
That's
And
right.
I truly believe also, if we don't show up to things, like let's say it's too hot, Saturday morning, I need to go wake up baby to feed her so I can be here. It's too hot. I'm just gonna message Kalika and say, you know what, can we do it another time? Too hot. I need
And
to
plus,
do
too,
shower.
Kalika will understand. She's a mom.
Yeah,
She's
you
got
would
2
understand.
kids, right?
You would totally understand. But then I'm letting myself down, because how I do one thing is I'm not showing up. I'm also not showing up for myself. So I feel like hopefully a lot of younger people hear this message. How you do one thing is how you do everything. If you don't show up to things, or you have a million reasons why you don't want to show up to a thing last minute, you're also not showing up for yourself. And this is probably one of the first lessons in success, is show up, show up.
Yeah,
And then
I
show
w-
up again.
I believe that life is a hologram. So you know what a hologram is, which is different from a
Mhm.
photograph, right? A hologram, you can take a little piece of the hologram and it is representation of the entire thing, which is exactly what you're talking about. How you're doing this hour is how you're going to do this day, this week, this year, your lifetime. So I completely agree with you 100%. Every detail counts. And even like how you, let's say, are cleaning up the kitchen, like how are you doing it? Are you doing it with some type of energy, or just like banging around, it all counts. It really does.
Oh gosh, yeah. And that's such a great reminder even for myself, because I do have to also remind myself. The one thing actually I'm learning right now with, having so many moving parts, and I am working a bit too much, I think, for having also a newborn. But the thing that this is teaching me, this chapter, and the reason why I'm working a lot is because this is our high season, sort of November, December, January, and then I can take it a bit more easy again. But the thing I'm learning is, and failing at sometimes, is I'm multitasking in terms of, I would carry baby and I would feed her while I'm loading the dishwasher, while I'm doing an email or watching a video. And I'm everywhere but nowhere, I have noticed. And I'm getting better now because I've had this epiphany. But I'm everywhere but nowhere. And I'm in a meeting, but I'm not really in a meeting because I'm thinking about 10 other things. I'm feeding baby, which is such a special moment, but I'm not there. I'm physically there, but I'm not there. And that's so many missed moments that I'll never get back. So the thing that I'm learning, and I had actually all of my forum members come up here just the last 2 days to my place. And that talked about that. I said, the thing that I'm learning the most is to just remind myself to be in that moment, because life is so crazy. So the moment that I have with you now, I only have it right now. So I'm trying to not think about the other 10 things that are happening out there. And then the moment that I have with Kaya, I'm trying to just be there and not be on my phone while I'm feeding Kaya or doing other things. Just be in that moment. And when I succeed at it, which is not always, it brings such a peace and it brings such flow. So it's sort of I'm sharing this as a reminder for myself, and hopefully other people will take something away from it too.
Yeah, and I think that it also is a lasting type of joy, when you're actually there in the moment. You talked about flow, and that this is sort of life, like, is there anything that we can do to continuously evoke awareness, right? Because we live in this sort of dialectical world. We're experiencing the world, but we're also observing it. And so it is so joyous when we get a chance to observe yourself, just like what you just did. You observed yourself in the kitchen with like an octopus. and then you can sort of snap out of it, and experience.
I love what you said. Continuously evoke awareness. I love that. And it's what you say. And there are some, philosophies around this where you are in the moment, but as you mentioned, but you're also the observer of the moment. And there's such power in that, because we're often, when the opposite is almost frantic, which I have definitely moments of too, where you're frantic and you're just so scattered, but it never feels good. And you never really achieve more either when you're frantic. Because when and I call it the Zen moments. I said to my forum, one of my expansions this quarter is to have more of these Zen moments with people and with myself, in being present, evoking awareness continuously, as you say. I love that. That should be a quote of yours, actually.
And also think, when we do see ourselves frantic, even just seeing this beautiful young mom with newborn, and just giving her compassion as well too, like, wow, like she's up to lots of good things, rather than like, oh well, I better be mindful, just even like, a hand on the heart. Because sometimes when I do that, when you can see yourself in that spiral of energy, just putting your hand on your heart and saying, okay, everything's okay. Everything's fine. That fierce self-compassion that for this woman who's trying to do so many wonderful things, and make a difference in the world,
Yeah, I love that. And I love the hand on your heart, even as how I think in NLP you do these anchors. And I feel like for me also, the hand on my heart, I often, when I go through difficult times or difficult decisions, I would lie in bed in the night, falling asleep and waking up, and I would just put my hand on my heart to just almost like center myself, and again go more within and find the answers within rather than everywhere else. And it's almost like this anchoring movement which brings you almost back home. I think if you continuously do it, it's like, oh, okay, I'm back home, it's all good. The world is crazy out here, and a million things that are happening also. Even what's happening in the world right now, I find it really difficult to watch, and I'm trying to support where I can, and supporting different families that need support in in some of these regions. but then again, you know, we're doing the best we can. So, okay, let's come back home, because it can be quite, the energy you can let it, I can let it drag me down a bit and go, oh, wow, like what's happening, you know? So come back home, and from that place, I can have a bigger impact in my environment, immediate environment here, but then also in the community.
I love that, coming back home and also realizing that, you know, one of your values is kindness and also generosity, that really starts at home, right?
Yeah.
You have
Yeah.
to be kind to yourself. You have to be generous to yourself. You have to be compassionate yourself so that you have to be adventurous yourself, right? So that you can share it with everyone else. It
That's
always
so,
starts there. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Such an important discussion.
Yeah. What are you excited about for the future? 2024 is, I can't believe, is right around the corner.
Yeah, I'm really getting excited about 2024, and I'm starting to sort of prepare and plan and think and just work on myself and putting in place some plans for the next year. One of my members, so one of our clients at Basic Bananas, she's a psychic, and she told me, actually, she said the other day, she said, hey, and this is, you know, public knowledge, but she reminded me, she said, next year is a year 8. So you know how you get to the number by adding 2, 0, 2, 4. So that's 8. So we are in a year 7 now. So 2023, 2, 2, 3 equals 7. Now next year apparently is a year 8. And also my life path, apparently, this is all knowledge I got from her, is also an 8. And because you put all your birthday numbers together, and then the number that you get is your life path. So mine is an 8. Next year is a year 8. The year 8 apparently is abundance. And funnily enough, and abundance doesn't just mean wealth, but it also can include wealth and just abundance, like generosity, abundance of spirit, and also abundance of money, abundance. And funnily enough, this year, I didn't know that. And so this year, my theme was abundance. So next year, my theme is going to be abundance. I'm going to keep the same theme. And I'm quite excited to see what 2024 brings. I feel like it's going to shift on multiple levels for me, but also for the world. I feel like there's going to be some shifting happening. And also at the moment, and again, I don't want to get too woo-woo, but I really, this is another theme we slightly touched on, is the theme of intuition. And I really trust my intuition. I only learned to trust my intuition when I moved to Australia. I never really knew much about it before the age of 23. And then suddenly I heard about it and I studied, you know, the likes of Richard Branson and how he makes decisions. I'm like, oh, you know, he makes some of his biggest decisions based on intuition, backed up with then fact checking. And so right now, I feel like I'm seeing a lot of 11:11. So when I look at my clock, usually for the time, it's usually 11:11. I'm like, this means that maybe I'm on the right path. And so
Yes.
I'm really excited. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited about that. I'm also excited to just explore more of this spiritual world. And I've just booked in with an astrologer that someone recommended to me, someone in the US, to just look at, you know, learning more about astrology and my birth chart, and then using that knowledge to put into the future. So that's the sort of the, you know, woo-woo spiritual side. On the more sort of planning side, I'm excited to have more adventures next year. And actually at one of the, you know, we just recently moved to up the coast to near Byron Bay 4 months ago, and it's very suburbia here. It's not exactly what I'm used to. It's beautiful. It's great for the kids because it's so safe. It's so suburbia. And so to keep me excited and sane in a very suburbia lifestyle, I need to have travels booked in. So one of the things I'm really excited about is, and you know this already, I'm doing a tour in the US for some speaking engagements. I'm doing the East Coast of US, so I've got a speaking engagement for EO Boston, EO Connecticut, EO Charlotte, and EO Long Island, and maybe adding a few more chapters in that region. And it's booked in.
And absolutely, like LA, depending on if it works on our schedule, your schedule.
Yeah,
And you said March, right? You're coming?
March. Yeah. So maybe LA, and also possibly San Diego if we can fit the date in, and if not, I'll just come back. And so I'm really excited. I'm bringing the whole family on a road trip and a nanny. I've booked the nanny in, and I've booked some flights already. So I'm really excited to do that so that I can still see, hey, I live in this beautiful, quiet, peaceful village here. It really is a village, and the beach is just here and it's stunning. But at the same time, I still get to, go out into the world and meet people and do adventurous things. So that's March. And then another trip, of course, I definitely have to go back to Europe. Haven't booked it yet, but I'm definitely going back to Europe again in European summer. And also possibly a motorcycle adventure after September when Kaya is 1. I'll probably do another little motorcycle adventure, maybe India, because EO India also wants me to do a tour. So I said I can do that in the second half of the year. And that means that maybe I'll tag on a little adventure in the north of India, possibly. So I'm really excited about that also.
Yeah, because I think who introduced us was Dave Willis. He said that you were one of the top rated speakers at GLC recently. And so we're so fortunate that you're able to come on to the podcast. And back to intuition, there's this wonderful book called Intuitive Being. Do you know that book by Jill Willard? You
No,
probably would really love it. I think back in the day, she was working with Gwyneth Paltrow, if you really love intuition. But I had her on the EO podcast, and it was just wonderful. Just being able to talk to someone who's intuitive. And I have so many tarot cards, all the different types,
Really?
energy cards, tarot cards. So,
that's, what's her name? I'll check out your podcast too.
Oh, it's Jill Willard.
Okay.
JILLWILLARD. I'll put it in the show notes. But it was probably one of the most fascinating and impactful books for me. She lives here in LA, so we actually did our podcast together. And the one thing that she said about intuition is she tried to deny it. So when she was younger, she knew that she was intuitive, but she tried to quiet down. She would know when people were having affairs or someone was having a hard time with their health, but she would always try to quiet it. And then at a certain point, this voice of wisdom is really trying to come out. And I think it's really important to hone it, right? To hone it and also be able to tell the difference, because sometimes this voice we hear is that you mentioned monkey mind voice that's trying to stop you. But then there's also this loving, nurturing voice that's really trying to give you space, really trying to give you space to succeed and to soar.
I agree. And when I first got really intrigued about intuition without knowing much about it, and I read a lot about it, I need to read that book. I haven't read it yet. I realized that it's almost scientific. We all have it, and it is just our unconscious mind processing information, so accessing information that we have. And then some of it is just in the universe, a bit more woo-woo, but a lot of it is actually a bit scientific, and we all have it. But we as children, we don't have all these filters that we put onto intuition, so we have a bit more. And then as we grow up, we put all these filters and all these belief systems on top of it, and it sort of it quietens that intuition. But we all have it, and it doesn't mean that we know exactly what people are thinking, but it will help us to feel things in our own life. Should I even little things like, should I walk down this alley here in El Salvador? I had that actually moment when I was traveling through South America, Central America actually. I was on a surf journey, and I was really young I had my own surfboard and doing public transport, and then I got off a bus in El Salvador. And I'm very trusting, and I believe in the goodness of people. And someone told me, hey, I can show you where the next bus is, and it was dark. We'll walk here. And then straight away my intuition is like, normally this would never happen. Normally I would like, yeah, thank you so much, I'll follow you, and let's, I know that you have a good heart. But something told me that this is not a good idea to follow this person. And instead I got into a taxi to the next bus stop, which I would never do. So I don't know if I was right or not, but my intuition told me, hey, you need to not follow this person. And who knows if I was right. But it's these little moments, even in business too. We all get approached for partnerships and deals and this and that, and I feel like a lot of it we can go, if it doesn't feel right, it probably isn't right. Even with team members, I'm sure you've had this. I've had this so many times. And I've also gone against intuition, where I would hire someone and they looked amazing, they spoke really well, and the CV looked amazing. Intuition was like, I don't know, but I'm going to hire them. And then, of course, it wasn't the right decision. Yeah.
I know. Especially because we always want to look for the good in people and we want them to succeed.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's one thing that I also love too. I love intuition. I just love that, we're having this conversation, and I wish we could continue talking. I can't believe we're already almost
I
an
know.
hour. Wow.
I know.
What are some parting words or advice for the entrepreneurs that are listening to this podcast? What would you like to say to them?
I think, if I summarize, there's so many things I would love to say, but if I think back on our conversation here, I really think just a few key themes that we discussed. One is to show up. The one big word of wisdom is just show up for yourself, but also show up to your commitments and trust your intuition. And one of my biggest ones, and then the third one. So the first one is show up for yourself and others. The second one is trust your intuition. And my mantra there is that I trust that the universe always has my back, even if it doesn't look like it in the moment. And the last one is kindness. Always respond with kindness. Even if you don't feel like it, try and see what happens. What happens if you respond with kindness? So those are probably looking back at this conversation, are the three key wisdoms that I would love to share.
Oh, I'm so excited. And I'm so excited to see you in the US next year. I'll, contact you separately regarding our retreat that's happening. It's May 1st through 3rd. So maybe there's a way that we can make it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't wait. Thank you again for everything that you're doing here. And I love your show. I discovered it, a few months ago, and I've been telling everyone about it. You are such a great interviewer.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much for showing up. And so beautiful, even with a newborn, and always prepared. And thank you so much. EO is so lucky to have you. Really appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much.